Let me tell you a story. A true story about pride, about pain, and about the kind of justice that doesn't just knock on your door, it kicks it down. Picture this, Beverly Hills. Marble floors so polished you can see your soul reflected back at you. Crystal chandeliers, worth more than most people make in a lifetime. And laughter. Cold, sharp laughter that cuts through the air like broken glass. This is where our story begins. Her name was Victoria Thames, 35 years old, hands rough from work, but eyes that held secrets deeper than anyone in that mansion could ever imagine. For 2 years, she'd cleaned that house, the Sinclair estate, they called it. Every morning at dawn, she'd slip in through the service entrance, invisible, silent, just another shadow moving through rooms filled with people who had everything, except the ability to see her as human. Daniel Sinclair was the master of that house, a millionaire, self-made. He'd tell anyone who'd listen, though he'd conveniently forget to mention the inheritance that gave him his start. He had that kind of face, handsome in a cold way, like a marble statue, perfect on the outside, but hollow where the heart should be. And then came the invitation. It arrived on a Wednesday. Victoria was scrubbing the floor of the main hallway when Daniel walked up, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the tiles she'd just cleaned. He was with his friends, Marcus and Jonathan, 2 other wealthy men who treated the world like their personal playground. "Victoria," Daniel said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. He held out a gold envelope. Actually gold, the kind of envelope that screamed money. She stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. "We're having a charity gala this Saturday," he continued, that cruel smile playing at his lips. "And I thought, why not invite you? After all, you're practically part of the family." His friend snickered. Victoria knew that sound. She'd heard it 1,000 times in her life. The sound of people who think they're better than you, laughing at a joke you're not in on. "Dress code is formal," Daniel added, his eyes glinting with malice. "Maximum elegance. I'm sure you have something suitable, don't you?" The laughter grew louder. It was a trap. Everyone knew it. Daniel wanted to humiliate her, wanted to parade her in front of California's elite like a circus act. "Look," he'd say, "this is what happens when you don't know your place." He'd even invited reporters, social media influencers, people with cameras and cruelty in equal measure. After Daniel walked away, his wife Melissa leaned over to him. "You're terrible," she whispered, but she was smiling. "The poor thing will probably show up in something borrowed and run away within 15 minutes. "That's the point," Daniel replied. "Everyone needs to remember where they stand in this world." But here's what Daniel didn't know. Here's what none of them knew. Victoria Thames had grown up in halls like that, long before she cleaned them, long before poverty forced her to her knees. She'd walk through ballrooms wearing silk and diamonds, her head held high. And some storms don't destroy you. They just teach you how to dance in the rain. Saturday came. The Sinclair estate was transformed into something out of a fairy tale, if fairy tales were written by people who'd forgotten what magic actually meant. Ice sculptures, imported roses, champagne that cost more per bottle than Victoria made in a month. The guests arrived in limousines, designers' dresses, borrowed jewelry, practiced smiles that never quite reached their eyes. And then she walked in. The room went silent first. Then came the whispers. Then the laughter. Victoria Thames descended the main staircase wearing a dress that made every woman in that room feel a flicker of something they'd never admit. Insecurity. It was midnight blue, cut perfectly to her frame, with details so intricate they could only be custom-made. Vintage but timeless. The kind of dress that doesn't just cost money. It carries history. Her hair was styled elegantly. Simple jewelry. Nothing flashy. But the way she carried herself. It was like watching a queen return to reclaim her throne. "Oh my God," Patricia Monroe whispered to her friend, gripping her champagne glass. She actually came. And look at what she's wearing. Where did a cleaning lady get a dress like that? She probably rented it. Saracen replied, but her voice wavered. She'll be paying it off for years. Daniel stood at the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of power. When he saw Victoria, his chest puffed up. This was it, his moment. The humiliation he'd orchestrated was about to begin. He walked toward her, his friends flanking him like bodyguards. Victoria, his voice boomed across the hall. What a pleasant surprise. I never doubted you'd come. After all, when a person like you receives an invitation to an event like this, a person like me? Victoria's voice cut through his words like a blade through silk. Calm, quiet, deadly. Go on, Daniel. Finish your sentence. For just a second, just a heartbeat, something in her tone made him hesitate. This wasn't a submissive woman who cleaned his floors. This was someone else entirely. But arrogance is a drug, and Daniel was addicted. Well, you know, he continued, recovering his confidence. Someone who doesn't normally frequent this kind of environment. You must be feeling quite intimidated by all this elegance. Victoria smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not an embarrassed smile. Something else. Something that made several people nearby stop laughing instinctively, as if their bodies recognized danger before their minds could process it. Intimidated, she repeated softly. Her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made him take an unconscious step backward. No, Daniel. I'm feeling exactly where I've always belonged. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. You could feel the shift in the room's energy, like the air before a thunderstorm. There was something about her, the way she stood, the way she spoke, the way she occupied space. It didn't match the narrative they'd all agreed upon, that she was small, forgettable, beneath them. Daniel cleared his throat. Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. I'm sure it will be educational for you. Oh, Victoria replied, her gaze slowly sweeping across the gathered crowd. I'm sure it will be educational for all of us. Hey, this is where it gets interesting. Before we go on, do me a favor, like this story and subscribe to this channel, so you don't miss out on series like this. Now, let's get back right on it. Daniel was having the time of his life, or so he thought. He tapped a silver spoon against his crystal glass, calling for attention. Everyone, he announced loudly, I'd like to introduce our special guest tonight, Victoria Thames, our dedicated cleaning lady. The laughter came in waves. Cruel, sharp waves. Cell phones came out. Photos were taken. This was content. This was entertainment. Melissa stood beside him, feigning concern. Daniel, she murmured, aren't you being a little cruel? Cruel? He laughed. I'm giving her the opportunity of a lifetime. When else would someone like her attend an event like this? But Victoria didn't run, didn't cry, didn't shrink. She stood in the center of that room, all eyes on her, and there was something in her expression that didn't fit. A calmness, a certainty, like someone who'd weathered far worse storms and emerged on the other side stronger. Patricia Monroe approached with her group of friends, all wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Victoria, dear, Patricia cooed, tell me, how long did it take you to choose that dress? It must have been so challenging to find something suitable. Actually, Victoria replied evenly, this dress has a very special history. It belonged to my mother. Your mother? Saracen laughed, a sharp, nasal sound. And where did your mother get a dress like that? Some fancy thrift store. Victoria's smile didn't waver. My mother wore this dress the last time she was in a ballroom like this. That was 20 years ago, when she was still Victoria Thames Sinclair. The words hung in the air. Thames Sinclair. A few people stopped talking, some instinct telling them that something important was happening, even if they didn't understand it yet. Daniel, who'd been laughing with his close friends, turned slowly. What did you say? Thames Sinclair, Victoria repeated, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. It's funny how some people choose to conveniently forget their own family history. Daniel's face began to change, the color draining. You're delusional, he said, but his voice cracked. I don't know what game you're playing, but this isn't a game, Daniel. Victoria took a step toward him. Several guests instinctively moved back. It's history. Our history. The history you tried to erase when you decided it was more convenient to pretend that certain people in this family never existed. Melissa grabbed Daniel's arm. What is she talking about? She's lying, Daniel said quickly. Too quickly. She's an unstable employee trying to get attention. Victoria reached into her small purse. When her hand emerged, she held something that made several people gasp audibly. A ring. Not just any ring. An heirloom. Old gold. Intricate engraving. And at its center, a distinctive sapphire that caught the chandelier light and threw it back in shards of blue fire. This ring, Victoria said, holding it up for everyone to see, was given to my mother by her father, Thomas Sinclair, my grandfather, the man you told your children died without an heir. The room erupted in whispers. Daniel was visibly shaking now. Where did you get that? How dare you steal? Steal. Victoria's laugh was cold. Daniel, you can't steal something that's rightfully yours by birthright. Patricia whispered to Sarah. Oh my God, do you think she's telling the truth? Impossible, Sarah murmured, but she didn't sound convinced anymore. Daniel would have told us if he had a cousin. Victoria heard. She turned to them. Cousin? No, dear, I'm not Daniel's cousin. She paused. Let the moment stretch. Every eye in that room was on her. I'm his half-sister. The explosion of voices was immediate. Shock, disbelief, confusion. Daniel looked like he'd been struck. This is ridiculous, he shouted. My father would never. You're making this up. Thomas Sinclair had an affair with my mother, Elizabeth Thames, for 5 years. Victoria continued, relentless. Unstoppable. She was the family's piano teacher. When she became pregnant with me, your father promised to take care of us. And he did, until he died. Melissa had her hand over her mouth, staring between Victoria and Daniel like she was watching her entire world collapse in real time. You, Victoria said, pointing directly at Daniel, decided it would be easier to pretend we never existed. You cut off our financial support, sold the house your father bought for my mother, left us in absolute poverty. I had no obligation, Daniel started. You had no obligation to take care of your father's family? Victoria's voice rose for the first time. Interesting philosophy. Considering you inherited 100% of a fortune that should have been divided between us. The way her words settled over the room like snow. Heavy, cold, suffocating. People began moving away from Daniel, as if proximity to him might contaminate them with scandal. Prove it, Daniel said desperately. Anyone can make up a story. Find a ring somewhere. Victoria smiled again, that dangerous smile. Oh, Daniel, do you really think I came here without proof? She took out her phone, made a gesture toward the entrance. You can come in now. 3 people entered the ballroom at that moment who would change everything. The first was Rebecca Walsh, Los Angeles' most respected investigative journalist. The second was Marcus Lee, an attorney specializing in inheritance and estate law. The third made Daniel Sinclair stagger backward, like he'd been physically struck. Dr. Bennett? Melissa whispered, recognizing their family physician. What are you doing here? Dr. Richard Bennett had treated Thomas Sinclair during the final years of his life. He was in his 70s now, his hands shaking, but his voice was steady. 20 years ago, he said, I was forced to sign a falsified death certificate. Thomas Sinclair did not die of natural causes. He was slowly poisoned with arsenic over a period of months. The room erupted. Screams. Gasps. The sound of champagne glasses hitting the floor. Rebecca Walsh raised her hand. Please, everyone, put your phones away. This is an official confession being recorded for legal purposes. Daniel was sweating now, visibly panicking. You're insane, Bennett. My father died of heart problems. Heart problems. Your father discovered the money you've been embezzling from the family company for years. Dr. Bennett continued, his voice shaking but determined. He had changed his will to include Victoria. He was about to report you to the police. That's when he started showing symptoms. Victoria stood silent, tears streaming down her face. 20 years. 20 years of carrying this truth alone. Marcus Lee opened his briefcase, pulled out official documents. This blood sample was tested last week by an independent laboratory. The arsenic levels were conclusive. You're making this up. Daniel screamed, his composure completely shattered. It's a conspiracy. You're all lying to ruin me. Rebecca Walsh stepped forward. Mr. Sinclair, I have transcripts of 5 conversations you had with Dr. Bennett between 2003 and 2004. Conversations where you threatened to destroy him professionally if he revealed what he'd found. Victoria finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos. Daniel, you didn't just kill our father. You stole 20 years of my life. I didn't kill anyone. Daniel pointed wildly at everyone. You're all lying. Then explain this, Victoria said calmly. She connected her phone to the mansion sound system. A recording began to play. Daniel's voice filled the room, unmistakable. Bennett, you're going to keep your mouth shut about anything unusual you found in the old man's blood. If you say one word, I guarantee you'll never practice medicine again. And as for that woman and her bastard daughter, they'll have to fend for themselves. The silence that followed was absolute, complete. Even the people who defended Daniel, who'd laughed at his jokes and drank his champagne, now looked at him like he was a stranger, a monster. Melissa stared at her husband, horror written across her face. Daniel, you really did this? 20 years, Victoria said, her voice breaking. 20 years of cleaning my own father's blood off the hands of his killer. She took a breath, steadied herself, found that calm again. You want to know how I got all this evidence? I didn't come to work here by accident. I applied specifically for this position, spent 2 years preparing, gaining access to the house, collecting evidence, piece by piece. Daniel tried one last desperate move. Even if all that is true, even if it doesn't change anything, the inheritance was distributed years ago, legally distributed. Marcus Lee smiled for the first time, a cold, professional smile. Actually, Mr. Sinclair, when there is evidence of murder, all assets can be redistributed according to the original will. And we have a copy of Thomas Sinclair's actual will, the one he wrote 3 days before he died. Victoria approached Daniel. He was backed against the wall now, trapped, cornered. Do you know what my biggest mistake was, Daniel? She asked softly. It was believing that you might change on your own, that you might develop a conscience. Please, Daniel whispered. All the arrogance gone. Just fear now. Raw, animal fear. Melissa, the children. This will destroy our family. You destroyed our family, Victoria replied, the moment you chose money over justice. Daniel collapsed into a chair, completely defeated. The transformation from arrogant millionaire to exposed criminal had taken less than 2 hours. Outside, sirens began to wail. The police had arrived. The next 2 hours turned that exclusive gala into the biggest scandal Beverly Hills had witnessed in decades. Daniel sat on the floor now, his back against the wall, watching his entire life disintegrate in real time. Rebecca Walsh had connected her laptop to the mansion's projection system. Documents, photos, recordings appeared on a giant screen for all to see. This is a bank transfer of $200,000 from Daniel Sinclair's personal account to Dr. Bennett, Rebecca narrated as the image filled the screen. Dated 3 days after Thomas Sinclair's death. The memo reads, Silence is golden. Melissa was on the other side of the room now, as far from her husband as she could get, crying silently. And this, Rebecca continued, is a recording of Daniel talking to his accountant about hiding company embezzlement. Daniel's voice echoed through the hall. I need you to make the numbers dance. If anyone discovers I've taken 20 million over the last 5 years, I'm finished. Blame it on market fluctuations, expansion costs, whatever. Patricia whispered to Sarah, "My God, he stole from his own company." Victoria stood in the center of it all, calm as the eye of a hurricane, watching each revelation destroy the man who'd murdered her father. Marcus Lee approached with another folder. "Mr. Sinclair, in addition to criminal charges, Miss Thames is filing a $50 million civil suit against you for wrongful death and misappropriation of inheritance." $50 million? Daniel looked up with dead eyes. "I don't have $50 million. "No," Victoria said quietly, "but your company is worth $120 million, and half of it has always been mine by right." The revelations continued. Evidence of blackmail, bribery, charity funds diverted to personal accounts. Each new piece of information drew gasps from the guests. People who'd arrived as Daniel's friends now avoided him like a disease. "Victoria," Daniel said, his voice broken, "please, you got what you wanted. Stop this." Victoria knelt down in front of him, looked him in the eye. "Daniel, you killed our father. You stole my family, my inheritance, my dignity. You made me clean floors for 2 years while knowing what you'd done. And you think this is about what I want?" "I can make it up to you," he whispered. "There is no making up for 20 years of injustice," Victoria replied with haunting calm. "But there are consequences." Melissa's phone rang. It was their son, calling from college. "Mom, is everything okay? The internet is saying Dad is a murderer." Melissa looked at Daniel with pure disgust. "Your own children are finding out what kind of monster you are on social media." When the police entered to arrest him, Daniel tried one last time to stand, but his legs gave way. "Helena," he called out to his wife, "please, the children, don't." Melissa's voice cut like ice. "Don't you dare mention our children. You've disgraced them forever." As they led Daniel away in handcuffs, past the same hall where he'd tried to humiliate Victoria just hours before, Victoria walked out onto the balcony. The city sparkled below, beautiful and cold and indifferent. Melissa joined her. "Victoria, I really didn't know anything." "I know," Victoria said gently. "You were a victim, too. What happens now?" Victoria looked out at Beverly Hills, glittering in the night. Now justice is finally served. And maybe this city will learn that character has nothing to do with a bank account. 6 months passed. Victoria Thames Sinclair sat in what used to be Daniel's office. She'd completely renovated it. The trophies of arrogance were gone, replaced by certificates from social programs and photos of employees, former janitors, security guards, receptionists who'd been promoted to executive positions. Daniel had been sentenced to 25 years in prison without possibility of parole. Murder, corporate fraud, blackmail, tax evasion. The charges were extensive. His personal fortune was seized to compensate his victims, and there were many. Victoria was just one of them. "Miss Sinclair," said Amanda, her new executive assistant who'd once worked as a cleaner in the building, "Forbes magazine is here for your interview about the company's transformation." Victoria smiled. In 6 months, she increased company profits by 40%, not through cruelty or exploitation, but by treating people like human beings. Fair wages, merit-based promotions, respect. It turned out that when people felt valued, they worked harder. Revolutionary concept. Melissa had divorced immediately, moved out of state with her children. Before leaving, she'd sought out Victoria. "You could have destroyed us completely," Melissa had said, "but you protected my children. I'll never forget that." "Children don't pay for their parents' sins," Victoria had replied. "They deserve the chance to be better people than he was." Dr. Bennett now worked as a medical consultant for the company, offering free health care to all employees. "I never thought I'd find the courage to do the right thing," he'd told Victoria. "You taught me it's never too late to find your dignity." Patricia and Sarah had tried to reach out, to apologize, to become friends. Victoria kept them at a polite distance. "You laughed at me when you thought I was inferior," she'd said. "Now you want my friendship because you know my bank account. That says everything about you." Victoria's story had gone viral worldwide. Speaking invitations poured in from universities, conferences, TED Talks, but she declined most of them. "I don't want to be famous for suffering," she explained in a rare interview. "I want to be known for what I built afterward." The company now sponsors scholarships for employees' children, a microcredit program for entrepreneurs in underserved communities, the largest domestic violence support fund in California. One quiet afternoon, a letter arrived from prison. From Daniel. "Victoria, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know you taught me that I became a monster. I spend every day trying to understand how I turned into someone capable of killing his own father for money. My children asked about you on their last visit. They want to meet the aunt who protected the family when their father failed." Victoria kept the letter, didn't reply. Forgiveness was a personal journey, and she wasn't there yet. Maybe she'd never be. But justice had been served. During the Forbes interview, the journalist asked, "Some people say your revenge was too cruel. What do you say to that?" "Revenge would have been doing to him what he did to me," Victoria replied calmly. "Justice is ensuring he pays for his crimes and that other people don't suffer what I suffered. There's a fundamental difference. What advice would you give to people facing similar injustices?" Victoria looked out the window, watched employees having lunch in the company garden that now offered them dignity and respect. "The best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you," she said. "It's building something so great that the injustice you suffer becomes only the first chapter in a story of triumph." That evening, Victoria went home, not to the small apartment where she lived during her years of planning, but to a comfortable house where she'd adopted 2 orphan girls who, like her, needed a second chance. As she helped them with homework, she thought about the father she'd barely known, Thomas Sinclair, a flawed man who'd made mistakes, but who tried to do right by her in the end. He would be proud, she thought, proud that his daughter hadn't just recovered what was stolen, but had transformed a company built on exploitation into a symbol of opportunity. Victoria's real victory wasn't dethroning Daniel. It was proving that power built on justice rather than fear multiplies and benefits everyone. Daniel had tried to humiliate a cleaning lady. He discovered, too late, that he'd underestimated an heiress. More importantly, he'd learned that dignity cannot be bought, inherited, or stolen. It's earned through the choices we make when no one is watching. And sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone chose to ignore. Because here's the truth they don't teach you in business school or country clubs or boardrooms. Justice might move slowly, but when it arrives, it's absolute. And the people you step on while climbing to the top, they remember, they watch, they wait. And when their moment comes, they don't just knock you down. They dismantle your entire world, brick by brick, with the same patient precision you once used to build your empire on their backs. Victoria Thames Sinclair learned that lesson the hard way, but she learned it completely. And in the end, she didn't just win. She transformed winning itself into something beautiful, something just, something worth remembering. And that, my friends, is a story worth telling. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that justice exists even when it takes 20 years to arrive, then remember it, share it. Let it be a reminder that how we treat people when they have nothing says everything about who we really are. Because someday, somewhere, that person you overlooked might just be the one holding the key to your entire future. And you'll wish, God, how you'll wish that you'd chosen kindness over cruelty when you had the chance. Like this story, share it, and subscribe to the Story Veranda for more stories like this. Thank you.